Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 218 review. This was a normal 2-week sprint. Let's get started. I'll start with the overview, Jeffrey on the UI, Adam on providers, and then Joe on the platform. As you can see, we had an uptick in PRs merged this sprint. The reason being that there was a blast out of updating all of the GitHub Actions workflows to be at the latest package versions. So that was hundreds of PRs. And you can see that over on the other side with the purple other being quite large, but otherwise we had 27 bug fixes and 13 enhancements. And over to Jeffrey for the UI.
Hi, in this sprint 218, 12 PRs got merged into the classic repo, out of which 8 are bugs, 2 are enhancements, and few others. I can explain about them in the following slides. Next slide. This PR from Brandon is related to an RBM build repository to upgrade the ES abstract version changes. And the ES abstract was introduced into the classic repo. Next slide. An issue was reported that there was still some minor alignment issues in the data tables, and this PR fixed the issue. Next slide. Another PR from Brandon, which ensures that the yarn.lock is not updated by yarn install. Next slide. This PR from David adds a check to the host controller and ensures that the host is able to be edited and updated before proceeding to the host edit form. This PR also disables the edit button in the show page and when the above certain conditions are met. Next slide. This PR fixes the utilization select by day person chart. And this was done by Gilbert, and David moved this to Morphy. Next slide. This PR was done before, but moved to Morphy now. This is regarding adding the missing advanced search routes to the configuration profiles by David. Next slide. This is also Morphy-related PR, which David created due to few merge conflicts before. This was the chart not being able to be rendered properly in the monitor utilization pages. Next slide. In this PR, Jason added a reload method which will allow reloading as the reloading the menu as settings change. Next slide. This PR was created as a result of merge conflicts in the Petrosian branch. This is related to adding the embedded workflow options to the service catalogs form. Next slide. And that's all from the UI side. Over to Adam.
Thanks, Jeffrey. For providers this sprint, Keenan added an XC management system association to the switch model so that we're able to display that generically on the UI in following sprints. We updated the list of instance types for Amazon. And for Kubernetes, we added a helper text to the token field. This is due to an issue where a token that's shared between multiple endpoints has to be revalidated if you change it on a different endpoint. And so there's a little helper text to explain to you that that's what has to happen. And we also fixed a no method error for during the refresh if you provide an invalid token. Still not clear to me how they got this token in there without, by bypassing validate, but if you do get that in there, then the refresh would fail. Next slide. For workflows, we are normalizing the result that's passed into a callback. So if you're ordering from a service, there's a callback after each step finishes to update the service to set it to either running or errored or finished. And the result it's expecting is returned from the automate format. And so we basically convert the workflow's status over to automate in order to have that work generically for both of them. We also fixed the default role is just a typo as automation. It should have been automate. That was causing queue items to not be processed when running the full EVM server. For Flow, we added an option to the both the Docker and the Podman runners to allow you to pass a network This is helpful for development if you want to pass network hosts to be able to hit local hosts from your containers without having to provide an IP address every time. Keenan also added a nice change to parse the Boolean choice rules at workflow parse initialize time as opposed to at runtime. This allows us to do earlier validation and not have to build objects at runtime. We can just evaluate them. We are now fixed a bug where we're only transforming payload template values for keys that end in $. This was a rule from the spec that was not being followed, and so we were transforming all values that started in $. But this is not correct per the spec, so we fixed that. We also fixed a bug where storing the next state in the context wasn't happening. So if you reloaded the workflow, the next state wouldn't be started and it would just loop infinitely. We moved the end property out of the base state class since it unfortunately isn't present in all of the states, and so it wasn't technically proper having it in the state base class. And we also added a credentials example to the README so that you can more easily see how to pass credentials over the command line. That's it for providers. Over, Joe.
Thanks, Adam. For platform enhancements, as already mentioned, Jason updated the GitHub Action version from V2 to V3 in many repositories. Then Brandon enhanced the appliance build GitHub workflow to schedule a weekly build on Sundays. Next, Keenan made a few enhancements to Vim performance states around fetching them for a timestamp with an interval and to not bring back old archive records. In RPM build, Brandon reverted a commit that disabled the npm manageIQ.org when it was down. In pods, Brandon removed the Perl star exclude since it no longer conflicts. Keenan added validation for the format of the settings change key value. Adam added some predicate methods to simplify testing environment variables with Boolean-like string values. And Jason added specs around import-export. Next slide. For platform bugs, Brandon fixed the Memcache container incorrectly specifying the Memcache user by name instead of numeric ID. He also ensured the yarn lock isn't updated by yarn install. And additionally, he added conditional logic to handle yarn 1 and newer, as the registry is set differently for each version. And finally, Jason fixed a test issue where we expected the using output from bundler, and version 2.4.17 no longer prints these. That's it for platform.
All right, and that's it for our Sprint 218 review. The next review, Sprint 219, will be on August 23rd at the usual place and time. And as always, I'd like to thank all the presenters today, all the contributors to ManageIQ, and our community. Thanks, everyone.